This podcast contains factual information only. It is intended for professional financial advisors and does not contain any personal financial advice. You should not make any investment, insurance, or financial decisions based on the content of this podcast.
Hey team, Ben Nash here. I'm one of the co-founders at XY Advisor and founder of the rapidly growing Pivot Wealth, which is my business baby I started from scratch about 8 years ago, and I've since scaled up to become one of Australia's better known financial advice companies for high income accumulators. You can join me every Tuesday as I have the pleasure of furthering my own knowledge by interviewing some of the best people in our industry and beyond to improve every part of what we do with our advice process. We're currently hiring financial advisors and associates, so if our approach resonates, you can learn more at pivotwealth.com.au/careers.
Plutosoft is a comprehensive financial planning software and CRM program. It covers every part of the advice process: fact-finding, strategy modelling, portfolio management, life insurance, SOA, and report generation. Plus, it includes workflow management and a client hub portal. Plutosoft helps financial planning firms produce high-quality advice in a fraction of the time and has an extensive range of platform data feeds. As the industry's complete all-in-one solution, Plutosoft has helped rocket fuel the success of leading financial planning firms around Australia.
Hey guys, Ben Nash from the XY Advisor team, and I'm pumped to be here today with the one and only Mr. Liam Shorte. Liam is huge in the XY community if you've been hiding under a rock, but he is director, he's an SMSF specialist advisor at Verante. Keen to pick Liam's brain and the evolution of his business and some of the lessons learned along the way. Liam, thanks for joining us, mate.
Great to join you.
Mate, it's an interesting background and some of the stories which we'll no doubt cover, but I thought maybe a good place to start would be just how you kicked off your business and, you know, how you've ended up where you are today.
Yeah, well, look, I married an Aussie nurse in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia. Came back here for 6 months in 2001 and never left. So basically, I had to start off from scratch again. So got a job in a accounting and financial planning firm. I was originally meant to do a bit of marketing for them, but the week I started, the power planner fell in love and left the business. So I stepped in and I knew I was going to have to do the exams and everything anyway. So that power planning was a great way to learn it. So first few years, just power planning, learning, soaking everything I could up. And because it was a mixed financial planning and accounting firm, and a lot of it revolved around the use of SMSFs and retirement planning. So yeah, the first few years were all learning, and then hit a bit of a hurdle in 2005 when I had a problem with my boss and ended up being a bit of a whistleblower. Because we were looking to merge a number of firms at the time, and in the due diligence, an issue came up that we couldn't ignore. So I basically talked myself out of a job at that stage and had to restart. But as part of what happened with that, I ended up having to go out and see every client. Did 65,000 kilometers that year. And it's from there I got my own license and started building a business. I really started looking at, what people were looking for in advice, and in the areas I lived and worked, it was very much a case of pre-retirement planning and retirement planning. And because I was starting practically from scratch, I had to figure out ways to get in front of accountants and get in front of clients. So yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because you were giving me a bit of the backstory on this before we fired up the camera, and without going into all of the detail, there were a few clients that got really badly burned. So essentially, you sent out to assure all of the other clients that everything was fine and that their money was safe and everything that was there, and essentially give them the make sure that they've got that peace of mind, but then give them the option of finding another financial planner. And 65,000 kilometers later, and all of those client conversations, that essentially so many of the clients wanted to stay with you looking after them, that you're licensee told you to set up your own business essentially.
Mm.
So that's, I'd say that I fell into being a business owner, but if there's a story about how that's happened, it was one of the most interesting ones I've ever heard.
Yeah. So, and look, it was a great learning curve, and it did teach me that because I'd had interaction with those clients over 2 or 3 years, it's amazing how much trust. One, I learned that trust can be abused, but two, I learned how much, even just over the phone with people and dealing with them via email, you do build up a lot of trust over the years. So, it is a real asset if you can work with that, to get further referrals and work on your business from there. When it came to about 2008, I would say I was struggling. I was working in partnership with a local accounting firm down here in Castle Hill. I was getting some business from them, fairly good. It was coming through, but I really needed to step up if I wanted to survive in the industry. So I was sitting down with a gentleman called Colin Williams, who's been in the industry for a long time, and he said, you need to find a niche. He said, if in the area you're working in, why don't you look at the SMSF space? Got totally blown away by what he was talking about. Went home that night, bought the Twitter handle, bought the website, smsfcoach.com.au.com. Basically, everything I could do about it, got it together, set up a WordPress blog, and really realized that there was a lot of technical information out there for SMSF and retirement planning, but nobody was breaking it down into plain English. So I just started doing a blog once a week, just taking technical articles, taking out all the legislation and all the jargon, and just breaking it down into plain English for people. I started that about 2009, 2010. And for the first few years, it was really going nowhere, but it was getting me a bit of attention. I was being asked for comments by the papers. I was getting it on Sky News Business Channel, so it was creating a regular stream of publicity. And now I look at my blog, and there's about 256 entries on there. I haven't done a blog in 10 months, and yet I'm still getting such a flow of business through from it. So it really is a case of, if you're trying to build a niche, try and build the collateral that you don't have to keep on doing new stuff all the time. If it's good advice, it's going to last longer term. So try and not just tie yourself down to specific dates, and just build that collateral over time, so that it does the work for you, rather than you having to chase it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just chatting to this company that we're doing a bit of a content partnership with at the moment, and I, somewhat similar to you, when I started Pivot in 2015, and at that time I'd never written a blog before. I was like, I'll give this a go, and I did a blog weekly for a while, and as these things go, similar to you, started getting some results, built a bit of momentum. One thing leads to another thing, but I, like you, have not done I've done a few blogs which I've used as our sales and marketing collateral, and then put them as blogs, but I haven't consistently blogged for a number of years. But in doing this content partnership, they said, have you got anything around these particular topics? And I went back down through the archives, and I found that there was like half a dozen articles that were exactly the same. It's like, how to make it easy to save more money, how to build another income investing, like these things that do sort of last forever. But I think one of the things that you touched on there is really consistency is key. And there's so many things when it comes to marketing that you can do. And I've definitely fallen into this trap before as well, that you can do, every social channel at the same time, and you can do paid advertising, and you can do online courses and webinars and all of these things, but you generally can't do them all unless you've got a business that's got a whole marketing team in it. And where people go wrong, I think, and where I've gone wrong in the past, is you play at the surface level, and then it's not working, and it takes a lot of time, and you're like, stuff this, like it's not worth the bang for buck, and then you stop and you don't see it to get results. Sort of like what happens with our clients, that if they get too caught up on strategies and aren't consistent, that they're not going to get the results either. But interesting, from what you were saying there around the fact that you've targeted the niche to target your referral partners. I've never actually come across that before. I feel like that's a really novel idea. It makes a lot of sense, but you go, okay, well, accountants need an SMSF solution, and they're going to be open to that conversation. So if you've got an ideal referral partner, why not put your niche beside them? That's great.
Well, the big concern I had was accountants just didn't trust financial planners. So I just couldn't, I couldn't build a business because I couldn't get the referrals. But then when I started writing the blogs, after a year or two, I found out that it was the staff in the accounting firms were Googling for solutions for the clients. They would find my blog. And, for example, one of the best blogs I've ever done is just the stamp duty concessions in each state for moving a property into a self-managed super fund. Okay, I do very little property, but nobody could find that information. I got a lawyer to just check it all, make sure it was correct. And that blog constantly gets about 20,000 hits a year. So I was just finding that the juniors in the accounting firms were saying to their bosses, look, the client needs to do this. They need to get advice. Do they have a planner? No, they don't. This guy's written an article, explains all how to do it. Maybe we should just send them to them. And then suddenly I was getting asked to come into the accounting firm instead of knocking on the door and saying, can I come in and have a chat with you? In most cases, they were saying no. Finally, I was being asked to come in and actually speak to their staff and speak to their clients.
I love it.
The main reason I targeted the niche was I found there was a lot of people wanted to know about retirement planning, and SMSFs were the flavor of the day. But very quickly, I realized that only about 2 or 3 out of 10 needed an SMSF.
Yeah.
But every client that came in asking about one was engaged. They wanted to manage that. They wanted to put money away for retirement. They wanted to put more into super. They wanted a bit more control. So it was a case of they came in, I analyzed what they needed, thought if an SMSF was required. If it wasn't, we had other solutions. So either a retail fund or an industry fund. And sometimes saying no to somebody is such a great way of building trust, because I would say to them, look, you don't need an SMSF for what you want to achieve. So here are some other solutions, and this is how much it'll save you by going down that route rather than taking on the risk yourself of trying to pick investments. And it worked.
And the admin, and even if you've got an admin provider, it's still a laborious exercise for sure.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, though, are fearful in niching that they're going to be cutting themselves out to, the broader market if they do pick a niche. What's been your experience with that, Liam?
Look, I have all sorts of clients. So purely, I just want anybody who's engaged and wants to be involved in their planning. And for me, that it worked by choosing that niche. Most of my clients don't know anything about the SMSF coach because they've been referred on from another client who they may have an SMSF, but they're just, their friends want some retirement planning. They come in and if I don't see any need for an SMSF, I'm not even mentioning it to them. So it's just purely you've got to have something to get them in the door. And then it's a case of finding, we all have to act in best interests. So if I don't think a client is right for an SMSF, I don't put them in there. I don't think I've ever actually suggested a client go into an SMSF. Most of them have come and asked, should they? And I've decided, and I've made a recommendation, yes or no.
Yeah, amazing. But I think it makes sense that a lot of people don't understand a lot of advice, consumers or, just general sort of finance people, like just general people, they don't understand what an SMSF means, and they're drawn to an SMSF because they feel like it gives them control. But these days you can get all that control with other solutions. So it makes sense that they've obviously got an interest to get them in and start the conversation. And it might be start with what they want or what they think they want, but then you can uncover what they need and deliver to that. Liam, what have been the biggest shifts in your business? You've been at it for quite a while. What have been the biggest changes that you've made over that time?
Look, I would say originally, like most young planners, I thought I was an investment guru to start with. And I quickly realized over time that, the index does very well. Industry funds do very well. So I stopped trying to be the investment guru, and from probably 2011 onwards, I concentrated on strategy. Every time I'm talking to clients, it's, look, I will start with the strategy. We'll eventually get to the investments. But, most people think of a financial planner, it's just doing investing. So if you can turn that conversation around and show them how much added value you can do, on the strategy side. I had clients in this morning who they're just retiring, and we're doing the downsizer contribution, withdrawal and recontribution strategies. They've sold a property, so we're doing carry forward concessional contributions to offset tax. And at the very end of it, I said, I'm going, oh, by the way, here's where the investments are going to be put. And so we've done an hour on strategy and 5 minutes on where the investments were going.
Yeah, well, I think increasingly that that is the main focus, and I think who knows what the future looks like. But I also love the index. I think even for non-people that don't want to follow that sort of approach, though, that in the future it's likely that tech is going to be a big part of investment choices for people. And it's sort of, what does that leave for financial planners? It's exactly that. It's the strategy, it's the coaching, the guidance, the support, the giving people confidence to take action. So I think if you don't have that in your repertoire, that you're potentially going to need to build the muscle at some point.
And look, one of the things I realized probably after 4 or 5 years as an advisor was that people don't have the confidence to retire. So you've got to put them in a position where they control that decision. So I get a lot of people coming in around 55. They say, oh, we're going to have to work till we're 67 or 70. I look at their situation. I'm going, they've saved really hard. They've put themselves in a really good position. If we do this properly, I say, look, let's look at 62. I think we can do that as a realistic strategy, and we might do a stretch goal of 60. How does that sound? And they just go, but how? And they're always thinking of their take-home pay. So they may be on a big salary, but if they're on 200,000, they're losing 35% of that in tax.
Yeah,
they don't realize that if they're structured properly in retirement, there's no tax. We can have tax-free pensions plus some assets outside that end up being tax-free as well. And that really, once you show the sustainability of a decent retirement income based on what they have, they are now in control of that decision to retire. And more, I used to always be working on retire at 65, 67. With nearly every client now, I'm stretching them. I'm going, come on, do you really want to be working at that age?
Yeah.
Or do you want to have a choice whether you work at that age? And so nearly, with most clients now, it's a real stretch goal to be in charge of the decision around 60, 62. And that's probably the biggest change.
I love it. And I think it's how much is that confidence worth? It pays for itself just in itself, but obviously, there's the dollars that sit behind it as well. Liam, what are the things that haven't changed in your business over the time that you've been going?
Paperwork. Compliance. It's just got more and more. I just think over the last few years it's got ridiculous. The amount of pages I'm putting in front of clients now for, fixed term service agreement, a fee form for each of their superannuations and their pensions. It's just authority to access information, and then you've got each of the industry funds and retail funds have got their own version of forms to do. This most of what we do is 90% the same with every fund and every fund manager and every insurance company we deal with. Yet they all feel that they need to have different types of forms. And I think
sometimes that it's a barrier that they put there on purpose because it's like it slows down access, or I don't really know what the strategy is around that, because ultimately if someone's going to change, they're going to change. But maybe there's enough people that just get jack of having to jump through all the hoops and give up that makes it worthwhile. Yeah,
but from a client's point of view, they only see it once a year. So if it was a standard form, they could trust, and they understood, that there was no chance of fraud. If there was one form that was used by the industry, it would be from their point of view, it would be much safer. But so it's one of my bugbears. And in the SMSF space, it's all the different trust deeds. 99% of people could use the exact same trust deed, yet everybody's out there spruiking their own versions of it for something that most clients will never even read. But as an advisor, I've got to read them. So it's a major pain.
Liam, what do you see as the key drivers of the growth of your business?
Look, one, I've built up the brand, I've built the reputation. Now we've got the flow of business coming in. At the moment, we're in stagnating because we just can't find good planners. So I could probably double the business easily if we had good planners on board. There's so many people need advice now. There's a huge cohort in that 60 to 65 age group, and now my 80 to 85-year-old clients, their children are coming to 55, 60, and they want to ensure that there's a transfer of wealth to them that works smoothly. So I think the big thing over the next 10 to 30 years is intergenerational wealth transfer and getting that right. And I just see so many advisors that don't even ask details about the children. They get the names or the ages and that's it. It's important to understand who's going to be the decision maker when your client can't handle it for themselves. I had one case where, when I was younger, I didn't ask that question. The father passed away. We delivered really steady returns and good, exactly what the parents wanted. But once the son became involved to help the mother, he decided to become a day trader with their money.
Oh, no.
So he didn't want me involved at all. That was fine. But she came back 5 years later and, half the wealth had disappeared. So, if I'd been involved in the conversation earlier on, then we could have, engaged with the son, made him understand what the parents had been trying to achieve each year because they wanted income. He was, a younger generation who just wanted to make as much money as possible. But, with that extra risk comes the risk of loss as well. And that's what happened.
And how are you practically doing that? Like, how are you tackling that with your clients, with new clients, with the clients that you've been working with for a while?
Very much through the estate planning to start with. Who really work with the clients on who's going to be their enduring power of attorney and their enduring guardian. And then the minute we start really having to plan, we say, look, bring them along for a meeting. Or we also offer that if they need advice themselves, we're happy to have an initial meeting and see if we can help without sort of being fully engaged. But now I'm having that second generation are becoming clients. So it's, I not only will I be taking over the parents, taking care of the parents, I'm taking care of their children and the inheritance that's going to come to the children as well. And once you get one of them in the door, more than likely the other kids are going to come on board as well when the inheritance comes, because everyone just wants a solution.
Yeah, totally. We sort of go a little bit the other way in that most of our clients are like 35 to 45, and because our clients are pretty generally, pretty solid levels of wealth, that their big concerns is making sure the parents are provided for. So it's almost like that it goes both ways, but there is that bigger concern for people that are doing sort of okay, that it's like, let's make sure that they're doing really well so that it doesn't become something that's consuming their resources at the wrong time. Obviously they want to help each other, but making sure that it's set for that. But I've sort of struggled with that in, just the different engagements. Obviously, I suppose it's a bit different if you're going from 80 to 50 because a lot of your clients are across those brackets. But I found that going the other way, it can be going from 30 to 60 or 70, that it is a little bit of a barrier in terms of the conversation. Are there any sort of hacks or lessons that you've learned there on how to drive engagement for someone that's peripheral, but not necessarily, drinking the Kool-Aid?
Yeah, look, we find you don't push it. You see, you just make them aware you're there. We've got a financial knowledge center, which is provided by Iris, that we provide free to our clients, and it's got a database of articles on tax, estate planning, superannuation, everything like that. So often we'll get the question, we've got a son who's 30, he wants to start up a new super fund. Where should he go? I'll just say, get him to come in. We'll do a small statement of advice. It's normally discounted based on the parents' needs. And with the younger clients, what we do to them is say, look, you need to know what your parents have in place, because if they don't have an enduring power of attorney and you have to to step in at some stage, you're going to have to go to the tribunal to get help them out. And I had a client during COVID that got stuck down in Victoria for nearly 2 months because they had to go to the Victorian tribunal to be able to control the assets of their parent. And he was trying to run a business at the same time. So it's very, it's not just the parents need to have stuff in place, but the kids need to know that that's in place so that their time isn't messed up in the future as well. So, but with a lot, it's just don't push it. Make sure you're available if they need it, even if it's for just a bit of general advice, and just constantly tell the parents to, make sure your children know who they need to come to if something goes wrong.
Do you find that they use they use those articles, the Learning Center or your content?
Not a lot, but the whole idea is that they're getting the newsletter once a month, so it's a trigger point. And what I do find is maybe after 6 months, someone will contact us and say, look, and we've seen a lot in the last year where, because of that My Super ratings thing, where some of the super funds did really poorly, we suddenly had people going, look, I've been with one of these underperforming funds for 15 years. I think we've got enough in there now that mum and dad have used you. I think we need to come and see you and actually, sort ourselves out, because it's a large pot of money that we'd ignored up to now. But when suddenly somebody tells you it's not performing, then you take notice.
Totally. And it's just that constant tap on the shoulder as well, that knowing that you're there. I think I make the analogy that like people get they see something, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, I should do that. And then they don't do anything. And then it's like the next time that it happens, it's like, oh shit, I still haven't done anything about that. Or it's still there. And then ultimately, like it's, like it's easy for life to get in the way, but then they just make that decision. And
if you're top of mind, they'll reach out to you. Yeah. And look, everyone's busy. And I only realized that, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that my clients, most of them had never had another planner. So they didn't refer because they didn't know if I was a good planner or not.
Yeah.
They had confidence in me, but they didn't have the confidence to tell somebody else that they should come to me. So, again, someone said, well, look, go into some of the awards, try and get some awards, because it gives your clients an anchor on which to refer you.
Yes.
So I did that around 2017-18. I went into the SMSF awards and won a couple of awards. I did the Financial Standards Power 50 every year. I made sure I was in there, and it doesn't take much. So now I've got clients who don't have SMSFs, but the very fact that I've got an award for something, they say, well, that means you must be fairly good at what you do. And they refer people to me. So it's good.
Yeah, it's just that external validation, I think, as a yardstick to measure against, that even if they don't understand the ins and outs of it, it's still in itself that they go there. I think that's why social media is so helpful as well, that you're constantly there, and it's like, they're like, oh, that seems to make sense. Maybe that person's shonky, or maybe they're a lunatic. And then it's like, you're still there, and you're there next year and the year after and the year after, that there's something in that, because there's so many people that come in and then they're gone. That
idea of consistency as well. Like I love social media, it's my way of winding down, but, and that's how a lot of the way I built my brand in the first place, because I didn't know very many people. I would just answer people's questions, or if somebody was, in the newspaper and an article was tweeted and there was something in there that wasn't clear, I'd just make it clear in a tweet or a Facebook post. And eventually what would happen was the journalist would start calling me for the answer and asking me what I thought was the solution. And that's, once you do that consistently, you make friends with them and they reach out to you whenever they need help.
And it's all momentum, I think, with that stuff. That's been my experience, that you start doing something and then it leads to something, something small, and then you keep doing that, and then it leads to something a little bit bigger, and then the things just get a little bit bigger, a little bit better, a little bit better for business, a little bit more of an opportunity, a little bit more profile, and they feed on each other. So, mate, it's great to see. What's coming up for you? What's your focus? What's on the radar?
I've got a huge backlog. So for me, I really need to get on top of that, hire 1 or 2 more planners and get that up and running. But 1st of July, for anybody involved in retirement planning is a major shift. So from the 1st of July 2022, your client's going to be able to put money into super as non-concessional up to 75 years of age without a work test. So there's going to be so many recontribution strategies, like a big opportunity to save on the death benefits tax. So moving money from taxable component to tax-free component, that is huge. The fact that we've got an extra 10 years or 8 years to do that. I saw the government coming out with the reducing the downsizer to 55. Well, if you're 55, you can get 2.43 million in to super before 75 just using the non-concessionals. You don't need the downsizer unless you're very rich. So, it's a case, again, it comes back to concentrate on the strategies, the areas where you can add value to clients. And that's more and more where I'm focusing, is just trying to make sure that we're not just looking at how to set them up for retirement or how to fund the income in retirement, but now looking what happens afterwards when they do pass away, especially with the limits on what can be in pension phase, whether or not, when the first person passes away, whether does all the money go to the spouse, or do we start getting it out to the next generation at that stage? So there's more use of insurance bonds, more use of trusts, and my clients are not multi-millionaires. I work in Castle Hill and the Hawkesbury in Northwest Sydney. They're just mum and dads. But the wealth that most mum and dads have built up now is fairly substantial, and they want to make sure it goes properly to the next generation.
As they should, and it's not, it's not easy going with that stuff. And I think, it's great to see all the strategic opportunities that are out there. I think that's one of the things that I love about being a planner, is that there's always something more to learn, and then they change, everything or almost everything, and it creates a new set of things that are there. But
you look at something like the carry forward concessional contributions. I picked up a few clients in the last few months who'd sold properties. They have bugger all super. And then I suddenly said, look, you've got a $300,000 capital gain. You haven't put any money into super in 5 years. I can get 100,000 of that capital gain reduced to 15% tax. And it just blows their mind that they didn't know about these things. And suddenly, you've got somebody who's a property investor, not interested in financial planning, and suddenly they get awakened to what the opportunities that are available, and you've got a client for life.
Totally. And I think, like you were saying early on, it's like you get them in with what they want or what they think they want, and then you give them what they need. It's great to see. Liam, my last question for you is that if you could go back to, day one of your business, you're about to, put out the shingle, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
That you have to build up a profile. There are so many advisors out there that you have to differentiate yourself from the rest, or you have to target a niche. You can't be a master of everything. I tried to be a mortgage broker early on. I thought I have a degree in accounting and economics, so I thought I might do the accounting work. I very clearly understood and probably learned from the SMSF space that you're better off working as a team with other professionals and try and do that early on. If I had known one thing, it would have been to be reaching out and building relationships much earlier on, and build trusting relationships, not revolving around how much each is going to pay you in commissions or fees, but what the value you can add to each other's businesses. I did some of the estate planning I see is cruel, where lawyers have just written a mum and dad will, not taking into consideration disabled children or children in businesses or in bad relationships. And when you step in there and say, look, you need to go to a lawyer who's really going to take care of you and understand your needs, you get nothing from it, but the client, the trust that you build with that client and that you transfer to that solicitor is huge. And that comes back over time.
Totally. And I think that's what allows you as well to be the expert in your lane. You need people that are experts in there so that the clients are still getting that whole view. But I think the days of being all things to all people is hard. And almost the days of fully integrated businesses there's a lot of commerciality in it. But from a client perspective and also from a business perspective, it's hard to do that in a sustainable, efficient and profitable way.
And to me, it's difficult to meet best interests. If you're trying to just put everybody in one, one hole, fit them all into the one area. I've got accountants and administrators, different ones suit different people on the SMSF space. I've got lawyers who do a lot of complex estate planning, simple estate planning. They're in different parts of the country. Some that are online, and the clients never meet them. But you have to have that variety. If you try and just pigeonhole everybody, you're going to do yourself and them a disservice long term.
And it's hard to stand out from the crowd, like you say, with the niche, if you're trying to be all things to all people as well. Yeah. So, mate, definitely some wise words there. But thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's great to watch you continue to kick goals as well. So, really appreciate your time, and looking forward to the next conversation.
Thank you very much. It was great.